My name is Mario Caccamo. I'm now the CEO of Niab. Niab is a non-for-profit research organization that works in translating science into practice in agriculture. That's our focus. I've been in this role for the last 3 years. Yes, it's an exciting time to work in agriculture. I'm happy to be able to have this role today. Yeah.
Thank you. And I guess the reason we're talking today is because you're going to be sharing with us your cancer experience. So perhaps you could take us back to the beginning of kind of what happened with you in terms of the diagnosis and everything.
No, thanks, Alex. Yes, I feel I was a healthy, very healthy person, and during the COVID times, I started to feel slightly more tired than usual. Which I was associating this to the fact that we were living different times, right? We couldn't interact with people as much. We were constrained. But in February 21, I noticed a lump that was a small lump in my chest, which called for some attention. I made an appointment with the GP. The first impression was that it wasn't really something to be concerned with, but just to confirm that, asked me for more studies, and I ended up having a CT scan that showed that I had a lymphoma, right? That was the first kind of diagnosis without much more detail because there are many different types of lymphomas. This is a cancer of the lymphatic system, right? This is affecting mostly of the lymphatic nodes, and the one I had in my chest was clearly a node that was affected.
So in terms of the type of cancer you were diagnosed with, then what would that be referred to as?
Yeah, after that initial diagnosis, I had to go through a biopsy because you need to look into what's the tissue, if you like, a specificity of the tissue. And that came with the diagnosis of a Hodgkin lymphoma. Lymphomas are divided in two big groups, non-Hodgkin's and Hodgkin, and this one was a Hodgkin lymphoma.
So when you received that diagnosis, you mentioned initially they didn't seem too concerned about it, but the follow-up test actually revealed it was lymphoma. How did you feel when you received that diagnosis? What was your reaction to that?
You see, being through the times of COVID, everything was done over the phone, which was potentially not very helpful because I couldn't ask questions. You're limited in how much you could do. Yes, it was a shock. The immediate reaction was a shock. First of all, because I didn't expect to be ill. Although I went to the doctor for some clear symptom, I wasn't feeling particularly unwell. Yes, it was a shock, and the initial 24 hours are always a bit difficult because you have too many questions that no one can really answer, and in particular because the first reaction you get from doctors is we need to check, we need to wait, we need to understand. Yeah, it was a shock. The only thing I can tell you that maybe helped me was to relate to cases in the family, and I wasn't the first case of lymphoma in the family. We can come back to that later, but that probably was helpful in the context of the shock because I had experience within the family. In this case, one of my sisters that went through a similar diagnosis 15 years ago.
So in terms of, I guess, breaking the news to your family, was that difficult, or was it something where, I guess, because of that previous experience, how was it speaking with your family?
No, it was difficult because, of course, now I have my own family in many ways, right? Because I have my children and my wife, and for them, that experience of the wider family wasn't really that present. No, it was difficult. It was difficult because the first reaction, the word cancer carries a lot of weight, if you like, right? And that was difficult to manage. It's interesting because, of course, people react in different ways, and I have 5 children, which means that I will have different reactions. But it wasn't an easy experience. Of course, it's important to have a family and talk to them. But yeah, it was the initial days are the difficult days because there's a lot of waiting where you cannot do too much, right? Until you get the full diagnosis and the treatment in place. It could take a bit of time. And, looking back, of course, being patient is important and being optimistic is important. Taking care of yourself is important, but it's true that it might take few weeks, and you have to be prepared for that. Yeah.
So I guess if you've had similar cancer in the family, were you more at risk of developing the cancer sort of genetically?
Potentially, yes, but that came to be clear after my diagnosis. When I knew about my sister diagnosis, it wasn't clear there was a cancer that was linked to genetic factors. There are other type of cancers that are strongly connected to genetics. In this case, is a possibility, but it's not very common, something that you will associate to genetics.
So FCN's in partnership with Macmillan Cancer Support, and part of the work that we're doing is the Nip It in the Bud campaign, which is really advocating for the early detection, but a greater awareness of the risks, signs and symptoms. Now, you mentioned earlier that you actually did feel perhaps more fatigued. Could you perhaps go into some of the symptoms in a bit more detail?
Yeah. Looking back, I did have some of the symptoms that you expect to have from lymphoma, which is, I mean, there are a list of them. They call it B symptoms. One of them is night sweats, which I started to have, and I associated to the winter. The other one is the fatigue. There's another one about having a cough that doesn't go away, and in my case, I did have a bit of a chest. I mean, I wouldn't say infection. It wasn't an infection, but it was a level of having a cough. Now, looking back, I did have um, all these symptoms all coming together. I wouldn't say that I left it for too late because when I came to the doctor, I mean, but I did leave there until I saw that lymph node. Probably I could have gone earlier, looking back. And it's probably one of the experiences I would like to share with the people. Of course, all these different symptoms in isolation could mean many different things. And but when they all come together, probably is an alarm bell that shouldn't be ignored.
Yeah. So if you had a message for anyone who may be listening to this interview, who may have a slight, even just a slight change in their health, what would your general sort of advice be to someone?
I think checking with your local doctor, your GP, is always a good move. And I know that the first reaction for people would be, I don't want to bother the doctor. I don't want to do it. Look, if you see a change in your health that you cannot explain very easily, try to avoid trying to explain it, because I was trying to explain it through the fact that it was locked down and we couldn't interact with people and there were a change in the environment. The truth is that I should have been clearly alert that there was a change in the status of my health. And I would recommend checking with your doctor. Is always useful. It's much better. I mean, if you think that this is going to be bothering the doctor, I mean, this is their role, and actually it's much better to be able to react early than having to deal with a more complicated disease that it will end up being more expensive anyway to the system, more expensive to yourself. That's why my recommendation is always check when you have a doubt.
And do you think sometimes, because it sounds, doctors they're only human and they're very busy. If, for example, a doctor says that they don't think there's anything wrong, probably nothing to worry about, do you think sometimes you have to kind of fight your corner and actually sort of say, well, actually, can we please give me a test? Can we please explore this further? Do you think that's fair?
Alex, I will actually agree with that point, because no one knows you more than yourself in many ways, right? And I mean, when I came to the first reaction was, you shouldn't worry, but we will do a test. I think that was a good call by the doctor, but it could be as well that the other doctor might have decided, well, this is nothing to worry too much. Look, if you don't feel that you're satisfied with the outcome of that meeting, I think having a conversation with your doctor and asking for more is a good move. There's always, as you said, people can we are all humans. We can postpone things that they don't need to be postponed, and it's important that we have that conversation with the doctor. It's always having a conversation and trying to explain why we think that we are not satisfied with the outcome. In particular, if for example, the symptom doesn't go away after some days. I wouldn't wait for months. Never wait for months. Months is too long, right?
So when you received your diagnosis, Mario, what was the treatment that you undertook?
The first treatment was a chemotherapy, which it was done over a 6-month period, which is a typical kind of length of this type of treatment, in where I had to come for the chemo sessions for every second week. Every cycle is composed of 2 of these visits to have the chemotherapy delivered. Yes, and that was the initial treatment. The expectation, and it's something that is always very important that you will hear from the doctors, was in my case for hopefully curing the disease. And that was the initial kind of prognosis, which, of course, not everyone will have the same type of prognosis, but today there are many options in where it could be sometimes about extending, your life. And in my case, there were 2 or 3 boxes ticked. One was cure, the other one extending life.
And you're obviously in a very senior role, and I know a lot of people within the agricultural sector and in farming, they're very, very busy, very little time. So how did you kind of juggle going through that regular treatment with having a job and a family and all the other responsibilities?
Alex, my reaction to that is that every case is different, and it's sometimes a bit of a mistake trying to see what other people do to try to do yourself the same thing. What I would say, and it was very useful for me, is to talk to people and talk to other people's experience, because you learn from how the other people have approached the challenge, and try to see how this could work for you or not. And the chemotherapy itself is a learning experience, is a learning curve, because of the length, because in the early days you don't know how your body is going to react. But it's very important that, first of all, you take time for yourself. And it's amazing how when you take time for yourself, other things that you felt very important, it can still be delivered, and they will come in a different order. That's the only thing, right? Don't put yourself second, because it will not work for you and you will not be able to do either, right? I would say that was my first kind of reaction. And it was important for me as well to listen to my body and understand the process of chemo. Typically during that length of two weeks, you have a process where the drug is in your body and has some action. You metabolize the drug, which means that you remove the drug from your body. And different people do a different speed, and you will feel differently through all these days. And it's about learning. There is a level of regularity that when you start to learn, you can have a conversation with the nurses and your doctor to see how you will manage that. And if it's suitable for you to continue doing some work in between those days, I would recommend to do it. But not everyone can do it, and depends as well on the type of job you have, that you might or might not be able to do it. Right? Clearly, having a physical job could be more constraining because you will be more tired. It's not impossible, but it will be, and you adapt to these things. It's a learning experience, and it needs to be taken in that way. I don't want to give advice in this case, but I would like to say, from my experience, understanding that cycle and how it works for you is very useful. And it gives you the sense of control. Being able to control the process in terms of how it works for you is important too. Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say in our sector there's a stoicism and even perhaps a stubbornness sometimes. We've spoken to farmers who said that they're going to delay their radiotherapy treatment, for example, because they're in the middle of lambing and they want to get lambing out the way before they start going for the treatment. What would you sort of say to people who maybe have that sort of approach?
Look, don't delay the treatments. The one of the things we know about cancer is that timing is important. Timing is important in terms of how you react to the diagnosis, how you move as quickly as you can when you have the treatment. And there will be always options for you to get help if you need to deliver something for your work that has a deadline, because of course the work keeps going and we understand that. But I would say try to plan ahead in where you can get that help on time, put yourself first, go for that radiotherapy. Someone else will be out there to help you to deliver that activity that probably you were supposed to be doing yourself. But then you will be stronger for the future, and you will be there ready for the next lambing year. And I would say put yourself first. Yes. My kind of simple message, but very strong message, is you come first, and you'll be surprised how much you can do after taking that approach. You will be able to do a lot when you understand that you're coming first.
Mm. And during your treatment, did you get support from any charities like either Macmillan or any other organizations?
My experience, and this is a personal experience, that I had a lot of support through the material that was available for that. That was the way I wanted to approach this. I didn't get direct support, but I did read a lot of the material that was prepared, and I would say that for me and for the way I wanted to approach the treatment was invaluable. one of the things which was very useful for me about reading the material that was available is understanding the potential side effects of some of the medicines you have. It helps you to prepare. Sometimes you prepare for the worst and the worst doesn't happen, which is good news, but sometimes things don't work very well and you know the options you have, and I think that was very useful for me. And that was the way I did it. But I know that other people, they benefit from just being able to talk to the people, which I didn't do that much, but that's, I maybe talk to people at work. I think clearly as human beings and being social animals, and it's interesting because I would consider myself to be someone who is, I will be an introvert and, having not many friends, but very good friends, which I think it chimes well with what you see sometimes in the farming sector, just because the work we do, we don't tend to have big groups of people. But don't hesitate to talk to your friends. It's useful to have to listen to your voice, if you like, rather than just talking to yourself internally. It's good to talk to other people.
Thank you, Mario. And you mentioned there some of the side effects, perhaps when you were going through the chemo and the other aspects of your treatment. Could you tell us just a little bit about those, and also how you stayed positive throughout the whole process?
Yes, the main side effects I had myself were linked to damage to what is called peripheric nerves, which is called neuropathy, which is a common side effect you have in some of the chemotherapies, which affects the sensitivity you have in your fingers and your toes. And knowing that could happen, it helps me to understand what it was coming. The other thing I used to have was a bit of gout. Gout is part of the breaking of the cells. When you get those chemotherapy drugs that will generate a level of debris that gets into your bloodstream that will affect, it could be painful. And the intention there is of making sure that you can manage the pain. I mean, pain is never comfortable. One point I would say from my experience is that, and part of the point you made before, Alex, is it's almost natural that we try to brave the pain. I would say don't try to do that, because pain can be debilitating, and when you are weak, you cannot make good decisions. And there are so many options we have today in terms of managing pain. And if I didn't have the problem of sickness, but if you feel sick, there are so many options today and drugs we can use to avoid that. It's amazing in the last 25 years the progress science has made to manage all these side effects. The point is that because not everyone develops the same side effects, it's important that you connect to your nurse and your doctor. And in particular, nurses are very good in helping with that, in understanding the options you have. Because, as I said, let's avoid braving those side effects when you can manage them, because you need to be strong for the next cycle. I mean, unfortunately, it's true that chemotherapy is a long journey, and it's a journey that tends to debilitate your body. And it's important that if there's no reason to debilitate your body, make sure that you keep that strength, right? And the strength is not only physical, it's emotional. And the interesting thing about pain is that the pain has an effect on the emotional ability to keep fit. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mario. Is there anything else you would like to share while you've got this platform to do so about, again, what you've been through, and just any other comments for anyone else who might be listening?
Yes, one of the experience, my treatment, the first approach to the treatment didn't work, which meant that I had to go through a more kind of aggressive treatment as a second line of attack. It took me almost a year to get through all that. And it's challenging to see your body changing, right? We are used to see changes with age, yeah, which happens. We're getting older and we change, but it tends to have at the pace that is different, right? Suddenly, within a few weeks, your body changes dramatically, is something that you need to remain optimistic and patient that this is temporary. And it's hard to believe that it's temporary. That was probably my kind of, if I had to share my experience, is that it's amazing how the body can recover, right? And if you feel too tired because of the drugs, or you feel that you cannot sleep very well, and you would like to get back to your normal self, it's amazing that if you're, with patience, you can get back to that. And it's about retaining that level of being positive and taking care of yourself and your body, because it comes back. It takes time, but it's amazing how the body recovers. And maybe it's a good time for us, for for anyone that is going through this experience to think about what you can do to retain a healthy approach to life. Why not? It's always positive and good to do it, but you will see that the body recovers. Amazing. I mean, for me, it was that experience of saying, oh, well, I'm tired today. I cannot do things. I cannot even go upstairs because, my oxygen levels are not the same. And you recover on that when the treatment is over and you get the chance to recover your strength, you get back your own self. I mean, there are changes which maybe stay with you, but it's incredible how much resilient the body is. The resilience we have in our body is amazing.
And on that resilience point, having gone through this, has it changed your approach to life? Has it, in what ways has it changed you?
Well, look, there's a bit of a cliche about, yes, of course, valuing the things which are important in life. But, the truth is that probably we should all do this in any way. But if you have the experience of going through something that has, put yourself into that very, stressing your body in the way that these treatments sometimes they do, it's important that you understand the really important things in life. I mean, for me, it was friendship, was family, of course, the family ties. And as I said at the beginning, I wouldn't consider myself to be someone who has a big group of friends. But, those connections that you value, it's important that we nurture them, and we nurture them not just during the treatment, which people will. There is, of course, always this point that when you are ill, people will be close to you. And then, when you start to recover, people maybe forget. But that's part of life. We need to make sure that we keep a positive, being positive about life and being excited about the things we do, but always making sure that we nurture those relationships that they're important in life. I think for me that was probably a kind of a lesson I got from all this. I don't know if I'm doing better now than I did before, but it clearly put it into the fore that we are at the end of the day humans, and we are part of a bigger network, and we have a role to play. I mean, as I said before, maybe the only thing I would like to recognize is how lucky we are in the UK to have such a supportive health system, right? I know that there are many things that we can do better, and don't take me wrong, I'm not going to be just ignoring, if you like, that there are things that can improve. But the fact that we have a health system that is accessible to everyone, and of course, part of your work, Alex, which I really value, is that you're trying to make sure that this is actually the case, right? That this level of quality of health services available to everyone. But it's important that we retain this. For me, when I was in some of the more, in the second treatment, which I had to be in hospital for 4 weeks, I shared that space with people from all corners of society and life. And I think that's a great, it's very valuable to recognize this. We have this in the UK, because not every country will have the same level of access to health that is so equitative as is here in the UK. And I would like to take the opportunity to kind of recognize how important it is.